stop scrolling. Because what I'm about to tell you is something that even the most dedicated ARMY might not have fully processed yet. Rolling Stone, the most prestigious music magazine in the world, the same publication that has covered everyone from the Beatles to Michael Jackson, from Elvis to Beyoncé, just put BTS on their biggest cover in nearly 60 years. 8 covers, 7 solo covers, 1 group cover, the most ambitious editorial package in the magazine's entire history. And in the middle of all that, buried inside a cover story written by one of the most respected music journalists alive, there was one sentence. One single sentence that stopped the entire K-pop world in its tracks. Rolling Stone called J-Hope the emotional backbone of BTS, and then immediately said that J-Hope is only rivaled by Jimin, who received formal training as the best dancer in the group. One sentence, and suddenly, everything ARMY has been saying for years was officially on record. So today we're going to break down exactly what Rolling Stone saw, why that one sentence carries so much weight, and most importantly, what actually makes Jimin different from every other dancer not just in BTS, but in the entire industry. Because here's the thing, if you've ever watched Jimin dance, you already know there's something different happening. It's not just that his moves are sharp, it's not just that his technique is clean. There's something deeper going on, something that's incredibly difficult to put into words, but you feel it the moment you see it. Like time slows down. Like everything else in the room disappears. Like he's not performing for a crowd of thousands, he's performing specifically, directly, only for you. And that feeling, it doesn't happen by accident. There are very concrete, very specific reasons why Jimin creates that effect. And Rolling Stone, in their May 2026 special issue, finally put those reasons on paper for the entire world to read. But to truly understand why that Rolling Stone mention is so much bigger than it looks on the surface, you have to understand where Jimin came from. You have to know the full story, not just the highlights reel, not just the iconic performances, but the real foundation that was built long before anyone outside of Busan knew his name. ParkJimin was born on October 13, 1995, in Busan, South Korea. And unlike many K-pop idols who discovered dance as part of their idol training, Jimin's relationship with dance started much earlier and ran much deeper. He enrolled at Busan High School of Arts and majored in contemporary dance. And I want you to really sit with that for a moment, because this is not a small detail. Contemporary dance, also known as modern dance, is one of the most demanding, most intellectually rigorous disciplines in the entire world of performing arts. There is no fixed style to imitate, no single technique to master and replicate. Instead, you are asked to study your own body at a profound level. To understand how every muscle works, how your weight moves in relationship to gravity, how your breath changes the quality of your movement, and most critically, how your inner emotional world can be translated directly into physical expression. Jimin was learning all of this as a teenager. Before idol life, before Big Hit, before BTS, he was already being trained to think about movement in a way that most performers never learn at all. This is where the fundamental difference begins. The majority of K-pop idols learn to dance after entering an agency. They are trained with pre-made choreography, polished through standardized techniques, and taught to execute movements with precision and consistency. And even that is extraordinarily difficult. Anyone who thinks otherwise has never tried to learn a full BTS routine in a week. But Jimin arrived at Big Hit with something that cannot be downloaded or fast-tracked. He arrived with an academic foundation in the language of movement itself. He already knew how to listen to his own body. He already understood that a gesture is not just a shape, it's a story. When Jimin auditioned for Big Hit Entertainment, he wasn't even planning to become an idol. The audition was almost spontaneous. His contemporary dance teacher, who had already recognized something extraordinary in Jimin, encouraged him to try. And so he did. He passed. And everything changed. But here's what most people don't know about what came next. When Jimin entered the Big Hit trainee system, he was not immediately the standout dancer. Far from it. He actually had the shortest training period of any BTS member before their debut. While his bandmates had been preparing for years, Jimin came in and was almost immediately thrown into the deep end. And that gap, that feeling of not being fully ready, of not being enough, stayed with him in a very profound way. In his 2021 Rolling Stone solo cover story, one of the most honest interviews he has ever given, Jimin said directly that when BTS debuted, he felt he wasn't fully ready or confident. He talked about his perfectionism, not as a personality quirk but as something almost painful, because of how completely his fans dedicate themselves to loving and supporting what he does. He felt that making mistakes was a kind of betrayal of that love. That is an enormous amount of weight for any person to carry. And the way Jimin responded to that weight was not to shrink from it. His response was to outwork everyone. There are stories, shared by staff, by fellow members, by people who were in those practice rooms, that Jimin was consistently the last person to leave. That he would repeat a single piece of choreography not 10 times, not 50 times, but hundreds of times, until it didn't just look right from the outside but felt right from the inside. Until the movement wasn't something he was doing but something he was being. And this isn't the kind of story that gets manufactured for marketing purposes. This is a pattern you can verify yourself if you go back and watch Jimin's performances from era to era. Every comeback, there is something more. Something deeper. A new layer that wasn't there before. The kind of growth that only comes from a person who genuinely refuses to be satisfied with good enough. Now let's talk about the 3 things that make Jimin truly unique, not just among K-pop dancers, not just within BTS, but within the broader world of professional performance. Because Rolling Stone didn't make that statement casually. They made it because these qualities are visible, are documented, and are undeniable. The first is what dance scholars call embodiment, the ability to truly live inside a movement rather than simply execute it. This is directly connected to Jimin's background in contemporary dance. In that discipline, you are not taught to copy someone else's movement. You are taught to generate movement from within yourself. Every gesture must have an emotional origin point, a reason to exist. And Jimin carries that philosophy into every BTS choreography, even routines that were designed by someone else entirely. He doesn't just follow the steps. He finds a way to make those steps his. There is a difference, and it is a visible, felt difference, between a dancer who is performing a choreography and a dancer who is inhabiting it. Jimin inhabits it. Always. Watch him carefully the next time you see a BTS performance. Watch what happens after he hits a pose. Most dancers will complete the movement and reset. Jimin continues it. There is an energy that keeps flowing even after the physical position has been achieved. A vibration that doesn't stop just because the count is over. This is extraordinarily difficult to teach. You cannot drill this into someone through repetition of technique alone. It has to be felt. It has to come from a place of genuine understanding of what movement actually is. And Jimin has been building that understanding since he was a teenager. The second quality is his body control, and specifically something called isolation. Jimin can move one part of his body with extraordinary precision while another part remains completely still, or moves at an entirely different rhythm simultaneously. This is visible throughout BTS choreography, but it's most dramatic in his solo work. Pay attention to his hands. There is no wasted movement. There is no gesture that happens by accident. Every finger, every wrist, every shoulder has a purpose and tells a story. And this level of isolation is not something you develop by learning K-pop choreography alone. It comes from years of contemporary dance training, from spending hours understanding the independent mechanics of your own body. It comes from having been asked, over and over again as a young student, what is your left hand saying while your right hand does this? Jimin has been answering that question his entire artistic life. The third quality, and this is the hardest one to explain technically but the easiest one for an audience to feel, is Jimin's ability to communicate emotionally through movement alone. Not through facial expressions, though he is exceptional at those too. Through his entire body as a medium of transmission. When Jimin dances sadness, you don't just observe movements that are slow or heavy. The sadness actually enters your chest. When he dances joy, the energy is contagious in a way that is almost physical, almost cellular. This is the highest level of what a dancer can achieve, the ability to make an audience not just watch but actually feel. And Rolling Stone, a publication that has watched thousands of performers across decades, recognized it immediately. Now, it's important to be fair about what Rolling Stone said about J-Hope, because J-Hope is genuinely exceptional. No one who has watched him perform would argue otherwise. His technical precision is remarkable. His explosive energy is iconic. His freestyle ability is the kind of thing that makes other professional dancers stop and stare. He is someone who can enter a song cold and immediately find a way to make it visually alive. Rolling Stone honored all of that by calling him the emotional backbone of the entire group. But when they added that J-Hope is only rivaled by Jimin, who received formal training, they were making a very specific point. They were acknowledging that there is a dimension to Jimin's ability that is fundamentally different, not just in degree, but in kind. Jimin's academic foundation in contemporary dance gave him a broader vocabulary of movement. It gave him a deeper capacity for adaptation and innovation. It gave him the ability to generate something genuinely new every single time he steps onto a stage, rather than refining and perfecting a known set of skills. Both things are extraordinary, but they are different things. And Rolling Stone understood that distinction and put it on paper. In the context of the era, BTS's comeback album released on March 20th, 2026, Jimin brings something to his performances that is noticeably different from previous eras. After completing mandatory military service, after 18 months of deep introspection and distance from the stage, he returned with a new kind of stillness. In the Netflix documentary BTS, The Return, we see a side of Jimin that is rarely visible in the performance context: quiet, reflective, deeply self-aware. He's the member who washes his dishes until they squeak, who watches science documentaries while eating his takeout, who says he could sit alone for 10 hours without feeling the need for noise or distraction. He describes himself as someone who has become more introverted with age, not because something was lost, but because something settled. And all of that stillness, all of that depth, flows directly into the way he moves in this era. If you've seen the music video for 2.0, one of the Era singles, you already know what I'm talking about. There is a maturity in Jimin's movement that doesn't rush. A control that doesn't come from tension, but from confidence. From trust in his own body, built over a decade of relentless work. And because of that maturity, every single movement feels like a statement. Not just choreography. A statement about who he is, about what he has survived, about how far he has traveled to get here. There is also something that even dedicated fans often overlook. Jimin is not only a dancer who executes other people's visions. He is an artist who contributes to how choreography is shaped in the first place. In his solo projects, and in certain BTS works, he has been directly involved in the creative choreographic process, bringing the perspective of a formally trained dancer into the room where the movement is being designed. The result is something that can't emerge when only one side of the equation is present. There is a collaboration between what is designed on paper and what is felt in the body, and Jimin is the bridge between those two worlds. That is rare. That is something most people in this industry spend their entire careers trying to become, and most never quite get there. Rolling Stone understands this, and that is why their mention of Jimin is not a casual compliment thrown into a long article. It is a recognition from one of the most credible institutions in music journalism that Jimin does something that is genuinely, specifically, irreducibly singular. Not singular in the sense of being better at the same thing, singular in the sense of doing something no one else does. And if you're wondering why a magazine acknowledgement matters at all, why a sentence in a cover story should feel significant when we're talking about someone who has performed in front of millions of people on every continent, here's why it matters for Jimin specifically. This is a person who has spent his entire career wrestling with the feeling of not being enough, who in his most honest interviews has said, directly, that he cannot easily forgive himself for mistakes because of how completely his fans give themselves to loving what he does. Who, despite more than a decade of extraordinary success, still approaches every performance as though there is something left to prove, not to the world but to himself. For a person built like that, genuine recognition from an institution that has no reason to flatter anyone, that has seen everything the music world has to offer for nearly 6 decades, that is not just validation. That is a moment in an artist's story. ARMY has known this for years, has known that when Jimin walks onto a stage, something happens that transcends performance. There is a connection that forms between him and whoever is watching, whether that's 50,000 people in a stadium or one person watching alone at 2 in the morning, that goes beyond the mechanics of entertainment. And now Rolling Stone, with all of its history and all of its credibility, is saying the same thing in their own words, in their biggest issue ever, to their entire global readership. But here's the most beautiful part of all of this. Jimin never asked for it. He has never stood on a stage, and demanded to be recognized. He has never positioned himself as the best or claimed the title that Rolling Stone just handed him. He is, consistently, the person in the room who says he still has more to learn. The person who, even at the absolute peak of a career that most artists could only dream of, still feels the pull to go back to the practice room and find something deeper. And perhaps that is precisely why this recognition feels so right. Because the most meaningful acknowledgments in this world don't go to the people who chase them with open hands. They go to the people who gave everything without asking for anything in return. So if you're still wondering what makes Jimin different from every other dancer, the answer is not one thing. It is the combination of everything. The contemporary dance foundation that gave him a vocabulary most idols never develop. The perfectionism that means he has never, in his entire career, decided that good enough is good enough. The emotional depth that gives every single movement a soul. The humility that keeps him learning even when the world has already acknowledged his greatness. And the long, difficult, beautiful journey that brought him here, through doubt, through relentless work, through small failures and the courage to keep going, to this cover, to this recognition, to this moment that has been his all along, even in the years when he wasn't sure he deserved it. Rolling Stone is not just complimenting Jimin. Rolling Stone is documenting a legacy. The legacy of a boy from Busan who learned to dance with his whole soul, who entered one of the most competitive industries on earth with the shortest training period in his group, who spent years in practice rooms long after everyone else had gone home, who walked onto stages in front of millions of people and made every single one of them feel like the performance was made just for them. That is not something money can buy or connections can manufacture. That is the result of pure dedication, genuine love for the art, and the courage to keep moving forward even when everything feels heavy. And at the end of all of this, the most important thing is not that Rolling Stone said Jimin is the best dancer in BTS. The most important thing is that Jimin already proved it on every stage, in every video, in every movement he has ever made, long before anyone at Rolling Stone wrote a single word about him. The world is simply catching up to what ARMY already knew. And if there is one thing we can all take from this moment, it is this. When you work with sincerity, when you practice not for applause but because you genuinely love what you do, the world will see it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, the world will see it. Just like Jimin himself once said, he will keep working hard. Not to prove something to anyone, but because that is what he does. That is who he is. And as long as there is a stage somewhere in this world, Jimin will be on it, dancing with everything he has, making everyone who watches feel that for just a moment, time actually stops.